Welcome to the Labrador podcast from Tales of Success Labrador Training. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Labrador podcast. My name's Vicky Sharp. I'm your host for this podcast and also a trainer at Tales of Success Labrador Training. In this episode, I'm talking to Caroline. She has her own Labradors, but she's also the owner of a fabulous business called Hedgerow Hounds. Caroline will tell you more about Hedgerow Hounds as the episode gets on, but if you're interested in great healthcare and nutrition for your Labrador, you will definitely want to stay tuned. You'll also hear how you can get some discount on your Hedgerow Hounds purchases. Hello, Caroline. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Hello, it's lovely to be here and talk about Labradors, which is my favourite subject.
Yeah, and you were just saying, actually, you don't normally do podcasts, but you've selected us carefully because we're the Labrador podcast, and I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
Right. So you're not just here to talk about business. You've already alluded to the fact that you're a massive Labrador fan. So just like me, we've got another Labrador fanatic in the house. So tell us all a little bit about your own personal dogs. Who have you got?
Well, at the moment, I have two rescue dogs, one from Labrador Lifeline and one from Labrador Rescue Trust. Now, Brie was my first rescue dog. I had him, probably 11 years. He was an emergency foster dog, arrived a few days before Christmas many years ago. And yeah, he's been an absolutely fantastic dog. He's an absolute joy. I mean, he was extremely difficult in the beginning, extremely aggressive towards men in particular. So he taught me an awful lot. And then I had another lovely fox red bitch, which came from Labrador Rescue Trust again. She was absolutely lovely and lived till she was 15. And now I have Violet, who's from Lab Lifeline, who was a lockdown puppy. And obviously the family went back to work and back to school, and she really struggled, and she spent most of her life in a crate. So again, she's was quite challenging when she arrived, but she's absolutely lovely. Great companion, huge character. So they're both absolutely beautiful dogs. So yeah, it's my experience with rescue dogs. Before that, it's I think I had my first Labradors of my own. They would have been a wedding present, so that was in 1989. Got two Labradors, and they're not supposed to, but two girls together, two little sisters, who got on brilliantly. There was never any grumbles or anything between them. They got on so well.
Because there is lots of kind of research and experiences on that littermate syndrome, where, you know, like you say, two from the same litter can be problematic.
Can be extremely difficult, yes. But I think because I had my own land at the time, so they had quite full days. They were out a lot of the time. So they're either sort of full on out in the fields, and they used to come up riding with us occasionally, or they'll be asleep. I think they had quite full lives, really, I think, which probably helped.
You said your first Labradors were wedding presents, and then you've had other Labradors since. Have you had any other breed of dog, or has it always been Labradors have just had that space?
I mean, when I was at home with my parents, we had Spaniels, Golden Retrievers and Labradors. My childhood, when I was very, very young, was been a black Labrador and a collie. It's pretty much, I mean, it was the moment I left home and could get my own dogs, it was definitely only, and at the time, only black Labradors as well. It was only ever going to be black Labradors, which I stuck to for many, many years, and always had the same family line as well. So there was my first ever male dog was from the same family line as the two original bitches. And then there was another male dog as well from the same family line. And it wasn't until I had my first rescue dog, who was a yellow Labrador. Something a little bit different than a fox red Labrador. So I've had all of them apart from chocolate. Actually, I've never had a chocolate Labrador.
Maybe that's next on the list.
Yeah.
So as we're
Yeah.
talking, you can maybe see over my shoulder, I've got 2 pictures of Labradors, one either side. So I've got a black one and a chocolate. They were my my 2 oldies. And different colours, different temperaments, different personalities.
Yeah.
You've got to try them all. Definitely got to try them all.
Yes.
You said something earlier about I think Brie, was that the name of one of your dogs?
Yes, he was my first rescue dog.
Because you said he was an emergency foster care. So was the intention to keep him, or were you just kind of short-term foster and that developed into lifelong?
He was in an absolutely dire situation where he was removed from, in danger of being put to sleep. Really awful sort of situation within a family household. So they needed to remove him quickly. They didn't know what he was like with children or men or anything, really. Didn't know very much about him. So I took him on. And yes, he was extremely difficult. Lots of 4 a.m. dog walks because he was very, very reactive with men, very reactive with dogs. He was fine with bitches, but other entire males he was particularly bad with. So yes, it was lots of very, very early morning walks because that was the only time no one was around. It was just me and my Labradors.
I guess when you have a rescue dog or a foster dog, you really are not 100% sure of what you're getting as far as character, temperament, and behaviours. Yet you've gone back and you've done it again. So there was obviously something a worthwhile experience. Would you recommend it as an option to other people?
Definitely. I mean, I've had 3 rescue labs, and they've all been. I've had them because I volunteer for both the rescues, the societies. I've had them as fosters, and they've just. I've sort of failed foster carer. Really, they've always stayed. I've never sort of handed them back. They've always stayed. So, it's a lovely thing to do. I guess. I mean, probably the aim is to obviously find them another home so you can then keep having others. But I've never been able to part with them as yet. So I guess that was the aim, wasn't it? To rehabilitate him, to pass him on, and then the next one comes in.
But it also sounds like maybe you've been chosen by your dogs to be the forever homes. And I think, if you've got a dog in the right home, right people, stick with it. How many dogs can you accommodate? Are you going to be like the crazy Labrador lady with 12 dogs?
I like 4 ideally. I had 3 together for a very long time, and that worked really well. There were 2 males, both been castrated, and then a bitch who has also been spayed, and that worked really well. That was yellow, black, and fox red, so it was that was a nice little combination that worked really well.
Oh, nice. So let's chat now about your business. So Hedgerow Hounds. So people will hear Hedgerow Hounds. They might have never heard of you before. They might know nothing about what you do. So give us a little rundown of what Hedgerow Hounds is all about.
Well, I mean, it's basically, it's a range of predominantly organic herbal blends. Initially, it started off, they were seasonal. So I'd have one for spring, which would be a lovely sort of cleansing spring tonic. It would then move into summer. And then there'd be, which was predominantly targeting flea and ticks, natural prevention. And then it was going to be autumn, and then winter. So that's how it started off. And then, as these things often do, it sort of grows and grows. And before you know it, you've got 9 blends, which all do something a little bit different. So then I think the next one was a calming one. I was asked, obviously, lots of anxious and reactive dogs. And then there was one for senior dogs. So there was a general sort of vitamin and mineral and herb one. So it's just sort of, as these things often do, just grown into something much, much bigger.
It's kind of like a herbal, natural supplement, I suppose.
Yeah, it's all herbs, superfoods, seeds, berries, and there's no sort of artificial colouring or preservatives or anything to bulk up the blends. That's why you don't have to feed very much. I think people are quite shocked at how little you have to feed. A Labrador would have, say, a teaspoon a day of the blend. So it's not huge amounts because it's quite concentrated, I guess. There's not lots of other things in there to bulk it up.
So it's essentially like a ready-made supplement or additive that you can apply on your dog's food to give them health and nutrition benefits once they've consumed it. Is that right?
Yes. I mean, it can literally go on to, I mean, a lot of my customers are raw feeders. So you can go on to raw food or just wet food. If you feed dry, it's probably better to just rehydrate the herbal blend with a little bit of hot water or warm water. So then it will allow it to coat the dry food. So some people feed two different blends. So we could potentially have one for breakfast and one for dinner. There's also one that tackles sort of digestive issues and reflux. So that's fairly sort of, you can adapt it to how your dog needs it. So some dogs maybe struggle overnight with reflux. So it could be made into just a little paste and something for bedtime, really, which helps coat their gut and just sort of ease any tummy troubles overnight.
What made you start creating these blends? Where did that stem from? Was it issues with your own dogs, previous employment? You know, what's your background, I suppose, and why did it all take place?
Well, that all started with my two Labrador bitches I had, back in sort of probably the early 90s. We had lots of issues at the time with dog food. I think there was a lot of scare with the whole sort of BSE thing, and people were having to change dog food, and some of the manufacturers were suddenly having to change recipes, couldn't source the proteins that they wanted. And I had two episodes. I had 4 dogs at that time, and they were having this horrendous diarrhea, and ended up with 2 of them in the vets because they were very poorly, and that turned out to be salmonella. And that was through more sort of well, like the mueslis. Used to be lots of sort of dry food with the maize and like a muesli style of food. So they were extremely unwell. So I changed brands, and within 4 months, a similar sort of thing happened, and 2 of them again ended up in the vets very poorly indeed. And that happened to be rancid fats this time. And the company were very good and paid all the vets' bills, but I thought I sort of had enough of it by then. We were in a mobile home because we were having a house built, and you can imagine with 4 Labradors with acute diarrhea in a mobile home. It was really the final straw. So I decided that I would just cook for the whole lot. So I got myself a big stock pot and then sort of made up, and they've got lots of different scraps of offal and meat. I think we probably used sort of potato and vegetables and just made a big old stew for them every single day and batch cooked for them. And we had a fantastic vet who's an absolute legend called Chris Day. And sadly, he died a couple of months ago, but he was just amazing with herbs and homeopathy, and very sort of big in raw feeding. So he helped me formulate, taught me about herbs, really. I used to forage my own, used to forage nettles and rose hips, and just sort of, I couldn't quite find what I wanted to change with the season. So I ended up making my own for the dogs. Which was added to this cooked food every day.
And then how did that develop then into a business? So you've created this product that works for your Labradors. You know, did you just produce too much and decide to sell it to your friends? Were people asking you for it?
That went on for quite a few years. And then I started making blends for the horses as well. And then I started doing all my therapy training. So I went off to Somerset on and off for sort of about 3 years and did all the sports therapy, sports massage, canine and equine. And again, sort of got into that whole complementary therapy world really, and was learning, just really hungry to learn anything more about herbs. And sort of natural feeding. And it was, I pretty much thought, well, what if I was to make just one blend to begin with? What would I make? And it was sort of, what is the most important on my list, really, through all the knowledge that I've gained. And that was Nature's Bounty was my very first blend. And it was only really supposed to be one blend at that stage.
And it's evolved from that point. So, you talk about,
it's just grown.
you talk about Nature's Blend. So tell everyone about the products that you sell. So you started with one and you've now got several products. Talk us through the different types, I suppose, and kind of what benefits each of those blends have. So if people do want to kind of look at your website, they've got an idea of what would work for them potentially.
Okay, I guess the main blend, and probably my best seller, is Nature's Bounty, which naturally repels fleas and ticks. I've made that, I've made it for probably about 15 years for my own dogs, but it's been for sale for 12 years. So that's that main job. It's a very nutritious blend. It has got a lovely organic seaweed in as well. But its main job is to repel fleas and ticks naturally. It's very good for skin and poor coat as well. Particularly, it's got neem in it, neem leaf, which is very good for skin issues. And the seaweed again is very good for skin issues.
I'm looking at that on your website as you speak, and there's two things that stand out to me. Firstly, it looks beautiful because it's colourful, it's bright, and it's lovely.
It's colourful, yeah.
And then I look at the ingredients list, and it is just really simple, natural ingredients. There's nothing in there that's like I would class as a preservative or anything nasty, no chemicals or anything like that, which is really good.
Hopefully you should be able to read the ingredients list and think, oh, I recognise that, rather than thinking, what on earth is that? I have to Google it to know what on earth it is. So
yeah, and actually I definitely recognise all those things, and I know what they all are, which is good. And it's a broad range of ingredients, but it's a relatively small list. It's not like a whole packet worth of stuff that you don't understand.
No.
So
and they do, considering they are predominantly organic, and there is absolutely, what you see on the label is what's in there. There's no surprises at all. It's and they do last remarkably well, considering they're not full of preservatives. So as long as they're kept dry, they're good for 10 or 11 months, which I think is quite good. And obviously, if you've got a tiny dog, just choose a smaller bag. Then you're not going to be stuck with it for months and months and months, and you're thinking, oh my God, it's about to go off. So that's why there's 3 different sizes, so you can choose the best one for your size of dog.
Tell us a little bit about some of the others. So I'm looking at another one on your website called Green Clay. Now, what's Green Clay about?
Yes, Green Clay is just an absolute wonder. It's not very exciting to look at. But for skin conditions, there's just nothing really that touches it. And all the years that I've used it, and it's just pure green clay. It comes from Italy. It is cosmetic grade, so it's the highest grade. It's very, very fine. Some of the lesser qualities are quite gritty, but that's incredibly fine. You could either put it on dry with. I actually have got a really clean blusher brush. You put makeup on with. I bought a new one of those, and that's really quite good for just putting it on very gently. It's brilliant for hot spots, which you can put on as a paste. So tiny little drop of water with the clay, you can stir it in, and it makes quite a thick paste, which I tend to put on with the back of a teaspoon. And that is brilliant for getting rid of the heat and the inflammation, and just drawing all the muck out and drying the hot spot up, really. Always recommend using Lucillin beforehand to keep it nice and clean, and then going in with the green clay. But it can be used literally on cats, dogs, horses, sheep,
I was just
Probably
looking at that. I was just about to say on your website, it says, can be used on sheep and all
yes,
types of animals. So it's
yeah.
kind of, that's almost like a handy one to have in the first aid box.
Oh, it's brilliant. And obviously it's human grade. So very good if you get stung or, touch patch of nettles and you're extremely sort of inflamed and itchy. Brilliant for that. You can just dust it on really. But it's just extraordinary product, and it's completely natural, pretty cheap. There's only one ingredient, and there's nothing else in it at all. Some people do add their own essential oils, so if you want to put a drop of something like tea tree or lavender oil, just a single drop into the paste, you could do that. So just keep the essential oils away from the cats. If you're going to use it with cats, just use it as neat clay, with nothing added to it.
Okay. There's another one that I'm looking at on your website, which I think would be really beneficial to a lot of Labrador owners, particularly those with young, energetic, hyperactive, crazy youngsters. It's the Tranquil blend. It says relax and calm. So
yes.
Who do you recommend this for?
That is, again, that's been around quite some time and got some fantastic feedback and reviews on that one. Any dog that's very stressy or anxious, reactive, just ones that just won't settle, or those that are just a little bit wired. Maybe if you're going into training your Labrador, it seems to help them just take the edge off so they can actually learn. Because sometimes if they're so hyper and stressy, the information just doesn't sort of go in. It just seems to help take the edge off them, so they can process what you're trying to teach them. It's very good for actually settling the gut as well, because obviously if a dog is quite anxious or stressed, incredibly excitable, it tends to go to their guts as well. So there's marshmallow root in there just to try and soothe the whole system. So that's a really nice one.
And with that being a natural blend, I'm guessing it's not going to sedate your dog like a medication would. It's more just to kind of take the edge and calm them.
I've chosen vervain rather than valerian, because valerian is quite it has more of a sedative effect, and actually some people, as people and animals, can react quite badly to valerian. It can almost send them more anxious, more excitable. It has the opposite effect of what you're actually aiming for. Whereas vervain is a little bit more reliable than valerian. I quite like valerian in a spray, or tends to be in something like like pet remedies, or where they can actually smell the valerian. It is quite sedating in that respect. So I have steered away from valerian and gone down the vervain route instead.
Another thing I notice about this product, again, it looks beautiful. It's colourful. It looks natural. Really, really nice looking. And I suppose everything is natural. So it's all herbal blends. Is that across all of your range? Is everything natural and herbal?
Yes. I have one. There's a powder which again doesn't look terribly exciting, the Digest and Rest. That is a beautiful blend, and that's had the most amazing feedback. It hasn't been out that long. It's probably one of my newer ones. I think it came out early last year. So it's not compared to the others, it's not the most attractive to look at. It's fairly, because the marshmallow root is just sort of a lightish beige colour. But that's very, very versatile. You can have it, feed it dry. You could make it into a paste. And for dogs that may be a little bit off colour and they don't want to be presented with a bowl full of food, you could maybe just make a tiny little bit with the paste and maybe some cottage cheese, or just something small that they're tempted to eat.
Okay.
Yes, it's all completely natural. I tend to use only 2 companies that I really, really trust, so I don't sort of shop around. I've used them for years, so I stick with them. And they know how fussy I am, and there's certain things I won't have, and I am quite fussy where they're sourced from, where they're grown.
So if it's an all natural product and you very kindly, transparently list all of your ingredients in them on the website, can people just go out to their own herb garden, pick all the same herbs and just feed it to their dog? Or is it a specifically developed recipe, if you like, to make sure that we get the best results?
Yes, all the blends, they have taken years really of research and what goes with what doesn't go together. So it all sort of gels nicely. Everything complements each other in the set ratios as well in each blend. So, I mean, I try to get as much as I can, which is grown in the UK. But obviously something like neem leaf can only be grown in India. So there are some things you just cannot get because our climate is just not, conducive to growing certain things. So I quite often go out in my herb garden and pick dill or fennel or parsley, something like that for the dogs, and chop it up really finely. So there are certain things you can grow yourself. I think if only you had one room for one herb, it would be parsley, and that would be great to add to your dog's food. But all the blends are veterinary approved. Approached my holistic vet and said, would you check this? Are you happy with the ratios and the wording of the product? And so she goes through all of it for me and okays everything.
Good. So why is this these type of products, this range of products, why are they more beneficial than going to a pet store and buying a non-herbal off-the-shelf additive to put in your dog's food?
Because it is natural and because it's food, really. I mean, they're all sort of food grade. The dog's body should accept and absorb that as being a food, whereas a lot of the other supplements you get are synthetic, so the body doesn't recognise as it being a food, so it can be absorbed more readily into the system. And I do like to have a broad range so people aren't just on one blend all year round. You can always sort of mix and match, and just for good variety, really. It's nice to vary it throughout the year to get the really good benefits from each different blend.
Absolutely. Should people kind of wait until they've got an issue with their dog before they start adding these wonderful herbal additives into food? Or actually, is there a good amount of your range that can almost be used as a preventative to stop things going wrong and generally just keep your dog in tip-top condition, even though there's not a specific problem?
People tend to go on Nature's Bounty, which is the blend to repel fleas and ticks. They will start in February. It just gives the herbs a chance to get into the system and start to work before fleas and ticks become active. I mean, it can be used later on in the year, but obviously you just need maybe 4 to 6 weeks for them to be really effective. So people will tend to start early in the year. If you start later, I always recommend that you just use a natural spray as a bit of a top up, really, until just give the herbs a little bit of a chance to get to work. So people do start early with that one just to prevent fleas and ticks. There is a senior blend, which is quite useful, geared for all the things that may sort of affect your Labrador as they get older. There's quite a few. The Green Season Superfoods is a nice one, just an everyday blend, which is really nutritious. And there is a performance blend, which people tend to use for canicross and agility, that sort of thing. And they will start probably about a month before their show season starts.
So if people are wanting to kind of dip their toe into this area, maybe they've not tried it before, have you got your kind of favorite product? I guess they're all your special products because you've created them all. But what would your one product be that everyone should try?
Well, apart from Nature's Bounty, which is so important to prevent fleas and ticks, so you don't have to keep using chemicals on your dog the whole time. Probably a really good one is green seeds and superfoods, because that has a little bit of vegetable in there, some lovely herbs, a few seeds. Then you have your superfoods like chlorella and spirulina. So that's a really nice one. The dogs love it as well. I find a lot of customers say that their dogs don't eat so much grass when they're on the greens and seeds as well. So it can prevent some dogs just eat huge amounts of grass. So it can that can really help. And it's quite an easy one if you certainly for raw feeders, if you don't want to prepare vegetables every day, that's quite a good one to use instead.
Okay, brilliant. Our listeners kindly sent in a couple of questions for you because they knew that I was chatting to you, and they had some specific questions around some of the issues they were having with their own Labradors, and to see really what advice you could give about if you've got any products that would help. So if you don't mind, I'm going to run through a couple of questions with you. So first one is, my Labrador gets a runny nose, particularly when he's been exercising in long grass. What can I do to help him?
That's probably a seasonal allergy. There is a blend which is really good for that particular sort of time of year, which is the Nature's Skin Tonic. It's got quite a lot of nettle in there, which is a natural antihistamine. So that's a really good one. Certainly trying to avoid this sort of peak times, isn't it, where pollen and is particularly bad, or the grass has gone to seed. I think sometimes rinsing them when you get back as well, a nice sort of natural coat rinse, or sometimes, just cider vinegar and lukewarm water, and just wipe them over or rinse them down to get the pollen actually off of them, is quite a good way.
I think actually on that point, I'm sure I read maybe on your social media, you had a recipe for a coat rinse that you could keep in the fridge for a week. Is that right?
Yeah, you can pop it in the fridge and either rinse or put it into one of the spray bottles so you can mist their coat. Nettle tea bags you can get, chamomile tea bags. You could make up quite a strong brew with those. Cider vinegar is very good. And most people have got that in their cupboard. And if you use distilled water, or just sort of boil up a whole kettle, let it cool, and then use that water when it's cool, and that's quite a good rinse. Calendula petals, if you can get them, you can either, I've got some growing in the herb patch, or you can get them dried. So that's a good. Green tea actually is quite good as well. So make use of those lovely herb tea bags. If you can get hold of some of those, they do make quite nice coat rinses. Either nettle, chamomile are particular good ones to use.
Okay, so it's just a case of kind of diluting it with your distilled water and spraying it on, yeah?
Yeah, and then a little sort of, I normally use a couple of capfuls from the cider vinegar and give that a stir. That's a really nice one to use. That's good for the skin as well.
Okay, brilliant. The next question might be a similar sort of answer, I suspect, but my dog gets leaky eyes at different times of the year. I suspect it's a seasonal allergy. Can I give her something to prevent it or make it a little bit more comfortable?
Yes, there seems to be so many seasonal allergies.
I think we are seeing way more seasonal allergies now than we were 5 years ago with our dogs, definitely.
Yes, I think just dogs in general are probably exposed to so many chemicals in the house, outside of the house, walking alongside farmers' fields. I think they're just sort of very sensitized to the environment nowadays. Again, it's maybe sort of using the coat rinse. You could make up your green tea or nettle tea and just bathe the eyes, or chamomile tea, just with a cotton pad. Nature's Tonic again has got the nettle, which may well help. I mean, you could dry your own nettles in spring if you fancy doing that. So nettle's quite good, and just being a little bit more mindful where you walk them at certain times of the year, really. Certainly near sort of wheat fields in particular, or the oilseed rape, they do spray an awful lot. I see dogs running through the wheat fields having a fabulous time, but I mean, it's sprayed on a weekly basis. So you've got to be really quite careful with what they're running through. And obviously they're quite low level, aren't they? They're getting it all in their face.
Yeah, is it straight in the eyes, straight up the nose, and in
Yes.
the face? Yeah, it's big consideration.
Yeah.
Okay.
And omega-3 is always good for skin issues or itchy dogs. I quite like the tin pilchards. I think they're excellent for your oily fish.
Yeah, absolutely. I never leave the supermarket without some tinned fish for my dogs.
Yes,
It's definitely
and it keeps nicely because it's tin, so they stay fresh in the tin. They're so cheap, and most dogs love them. So it's quite a nice way to incorporate some oily fish.
Thank you. The next question we've got is my dog has recently been castrated, and after that, he's developed a poor coat condition. And it's been described as almost like he's having a really bad hair day. Is there a product that might be able to help with that?
That sounds like omega-3 again, doesn't it, really? So I guess he's missing his hormones a little bit. So yes, I mean, certainly Nature's Bounty would be good, because that does improve coat and skin condition, but certainly try and incorporate oily fish into the diet. I prefer either a whole fish like the sprats or the tinned fish, as long as it's oily fish like the pilchards and the sardines. Rather than fish oil. I'm not a fan of fish oil at all, and it goes rancid incredibly quickly.
So that's things like salmon oil, presumably. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and particularly if they're in the plastic sort of pump bottles, the minute the air is in there, I mean, it goes rancid incredibly quickly, which is obviously inflammatory, and that's the whole thing we're trying to avoid. So if you can actually get some, a whole fish, sort of as in your tinned oily fish, or those little frozen sprats. A lot of dogs love those.
And also places like your supermarket or your fishmonger, at the end of the day, usually have a good amount of fish left over at a very reasonable price. It's a good, cheap way to get really good kind of stuff into your dogs as well.
And if you want to go down the feeding the fish oils, if you can try and get them in capsules, because obviously they're not exposed to air, so they won't be rancid. You can either feed the whole capsule, just double check on all the ingredients, or some people just put a pin in the end of the capsule and squeeze it. So that's quite a way. Then at least you'll know that it's. I mean, krill oil is very nice as well. You'll know it's nice and fresh, and hasn't had the air got to it.
Okay, great advice. And our final question is about fleas and ticks. So is there a product that is cheaper, more effective, and most importantly, less chemical based than the ones that they are currently buying from the shops or the vets? Now, I know on this point, people give treatments monthly for their dogs. Some people never at all. I personally use a herbal spray on my dogs before a walk and after a walk. So I don't put a tick treatment on my dogs because I'm concerned about all those chemicals that we put on. I think that's probably the same concerns that this person has here. So what's your view on flea and tick treatments?
I think that if you're going to feed something, so you're putting something in the food to repel fleas and ticks, certainly start early. If you're starting in June, July, when the little pests are really active, you've almost sort of missed the boat, really. So if you're going to go down that route, start early. It used to be just a summer issue, but now people are finding fleas and ticks in January and February time. They don't seem to go particularly dormant anymore. So definitely start early. Use your natural sprays as a backup. Before the herbs got into the system. Coat rinses, again, there's some really nice sprays and coat rinses on the market. That's all I've ever used really for the last, almost 20 years, is just my herbal blend. Most of the products I sell for that particular issue are either way up in Scotland or down sort of in the West Country, where the deer ticks in particular are really very active. They are a big problem. And it's certainly been quite effective for over the years. It has been. People just use that and nothing else. People will use garlic sometimes, a little bit of crushed garlic. Actually, I've got if somebody wants to know more about that, there is a blog on the website which gives sort of dosage and if the dog is on medication, certain things. There would be certain situations where you wouldn't use garlic, for instance, but some people will use, top up a little bit with garlic in the height of the summer. And I think that's not to use it all year round, maybe just sort of target the worst months when fleas and ticks are particularly active.
Okay. So if the person asking this question wants to move away from their chemical-based tick and flea, would it be Nature's Bounty, which would be the one that you'd suggest?
Yes,
one of your products?
That is purely created for the fleas and ticks in mind.
So if we look at Nature's Bounty in comparison price-wise to one of the kind of regular flea and tick treatment, where are we at? Are we looking at a similar sort of price? I mean, it doesn't look to be particularly expensive, in all honesty, from your website. So does that last a good amount of time?
It does. I mean, the 55-gram bag would last a Labrador 6 weeks. And then you've got the choice of 125, 250, 500 and a kilo for multiple dogs or bigger dogs. I mean, it is nutritious as well. So there's nothing nutritious about popping sort of, pour on things onto a dog or the tablet. So that's why I've included the organic seaweed, because the dogs are on it for quite a long time, normally February right the way through until sort of October, November time. So I've tried to make it nutritious so they do benefit in other ways from being on it for quite some time. So you don't need to feed large amounts of it at all. I mean, it hasn't got any side effects. I mean, nothing is absolutely 100% effective. When I've known the most horrendous flea outbreaks on somebody that was using chemical flea treatments every 2 months. So nothing can ever be 100%, not even the chemicals. Yeah, I mean, obviously always have your tick remover just in case at hand, but must admit, I mean, that's all my dogs have, and they are outside all year round really. Most of the time are out in the long grass and out with the horses. They're in the hay barn, and it's not something I've ever had an issue with. I mean, it potentially is a little bit more of a challenge if you've got cats in the house, because they do tend to bring fleas in sometimes. So it's something maybe you need the backup of the herbal blend, and maybe at certain times of the year a natural spray. But there's so many customers now that just sort of have the herbal blend and never use anything else.
I think with the chemical sort of spot-on treatments, that's probably the best way to describe them. They're really convenient for people because they can just pop the top off and squirt a liquid onto their dogs or their cats. I suspect not many of us that use those know exactly what we're putting onto our dogs. Is putting your herbal blend into their food a chore? Do you have to really think about it, or is it as simple as half a teaspoon or whatever it might be just in the food? And it sounds like it's a very easy process.
Yes, it's literally just a matter of popping the blend on the food. You can either leave it on the top, which you would with the Labrador, because they're just not fussed particularly, are they? But in other dogs, you could just stir it in. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, quite often what people will do, they will do their loading dose for 6 weeks where they feed every day, and then they'll drop down to 5 days a week. So they have Saturday and Sunday off, for instance, which makes it even more cost effective.
You were talking about garlic earlier, and that was one of the blog articles that I saw actually on your website. Yes. So a lot of people will be interested in all this kind of holistic approach that we've got to health, nutrition and care and that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about the blog articles that you have, where people can find it, what type of stuff they're going to find on there, and how it could be useful to them.
I've tried to have a huge range, really. So because I've trained as a canine therapist, there's quite a lot in there. How to manage, senior dogs, arthritic dogs, things to put in place, obviously to manage them when they get into their golden years. There's things about preventing sort of repetitive strain in there. There's quite a few recipes, so people that love to make their own treat recipes, for instance, or people that even do their own sort of doggy birthday cake. There's lots of recipes in there. How to do bone broth for people that like to make their own bone broth. So there is a good range of sort of everything you may come across that you need a bit of help with your dog, really. There are a few people that write for me. So there's a physiotherapist that's got a really good blog about the pros and cons for hydrotherapy compared to the water treadmill, for instance. If you were thinking about potentially having your dog go to hydrotherapy through arthritis or mobility issues. So there is a good range. People that maybe want to start raw feeding, there's lots of articles in there. So,
and if people are looking at things like raw feeding or introducing specific blends or herbs into their dog's diet, rather than just looking at blogs, rather than just buying and trying lots of different things, you do some consultations with people. So people can work with you as well, can't they? They can jump on a call with you and chat through their specific challenges or situations.
Yes.
So how do people do that?
Absolutely. You can contact me through the website or social media. But because dogs are, well, like us, they're just so individual. Sometimes you just sort of need to go a little bit more in depth, just to sort of get to the source of the problem, really. Sometimes it's just a few little minor tweaks. That's all it needs. But it's you do have to have that holistic approach where you sort of consider everything, within that dog's lifestyle or diet. Bear in mind, are they on medication? So you might have to consider that. So it's quite a good way of hopefully coming up with a really good outcome. You just have to go a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with me and training. It's really difficult to give generic advice all the time because our dogs are not generic, are they? They're all very, very different and require different things. So that kind of personal approach at times is golden, really.
Yeah, and everyone's got such different lifestyles as well. What can fit in for somebody's lifestyle would be impossible for somebody else. There's lots of things to take into consideration, aren't there? So
yeah. Where can people find you and Hedgerow Hounds? So I know you've got a website, but you're quite prolific on social media. You're all over the place there. So just give a little shout out to your social media handles so people can give you a little follow and see what you're all about.
Yeah, I probably do a little bit more on Instagram nowadays, and that's just Hedgerow Hounds. It's actually Hedgerow_Hounds. The Facebook page is Hedgerow Hounds again. If people that are into maybe sort of growing their own herbs and also planning enrichment garden for their dog, there is a Hedgerow Hounds home garden on Facebook and Instagram. So people that maybe are interested in that side of it.
You've also really kindly set up an exclusive discount for the Labrador podcast listeners. So tell us what people can get, where they can go and how they can use that.
Yeah, so if you go on to the website, which is hedgerowhounds.co.uk, and choose, this applies to anything on the shop, all the blends. If you pop in Lab 10 at checkout, so that's LAB 10. The lab is capital letters, there's no gaps, so it's LAB 10. That will give you 10% off your order.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Caroline, thank you very much for sharing your insights into Labradors, holistic approaches to care, nutrition and health. Remember to check out the Hedgerow Hounds website, check out the blog posts and take advantage of that special discount. Thanks for joining us. Find out more by checking out talesofsuccess.com or search at Tales Success on your social channels.